How things going? How things going your side, Misty?
Great. Okay.
All right.
Can you see?
Yes. So hello, everyone. We're going to be talking about adult deficit disorder this morning. And as a disclaimer, I'm not going to talk about this as a therapist. I am going to give some signs and symptoms and some things to do, but I'm doing this more as kind of like you would share your your recovery story, because I don't want anyone thinking that you can diagnose yourself from what I'm saying, because you can't. But I am going to give you some signs and symptoms and then some things to do about it. But I'm also going to share a little bit about my own discovery of having ADD, because I think that's important, because I was diagnosed. I was trying to figure out this morning, probably 27 years ago, and I would have never been diagnosed, I don't think. Had my youngest daughter was teaching school and starting a year in Fort Worth teaching school. And they had an in-service training on ADHD and ADD. And a doctor that actually had written a book came to do the seminars, the way I understand it. I'm the one that has always historically bought books for people to read, particularly people in my family. You might want to read this. So I went up there to see her room, and it was like the day after this seminar. And Christy said, "Mother, she was telling me about the man coming, and she said, would you be willing to read this book? And it's called Driven to Distraction." And I thought she meant for my profession. No, she was wanting me to read this so I could identify myself. Well, I read this book, and I read myself on every page. And what I realized, that I had never really been appropriately diagnosed through the years. And so I read the book. I went to my primary care physician, and without knowing, I didn't know anything about, very little about ADD, nothing about adult deficit disorder, and very little about ADHD. We didn't back then. We didn't. I mean, there's more information out now. But anyway, I went to my primary care physician, and I took the book, and I said, my daughter thinks I have ADD, and I've read the book, and I think I do. And she said, and I've seen her for quite a few years. And she said, I have always suspected that you had it, but I didn't want to diagnose you because you have learned to live and work with your symptoms. And my concern was, if I gave you the diagnosis, you might go backwards. And come to find out, she was the ADH doctor in Abilene. She was far ahead of most of the physicians here. And so she really guided me towards some things, basic things to do. And I did everything. I'm a good student, and I'll tell you, I can live with ADD today. And it is not a curse. It is and it's not a disease. It's biology. It's about brain chemistry. It's a neurological syndrome in the brain. You either have it or you don't have it. You don't just wake up one morning and think, I've got ADD. No, you either have it or you don't. Now, what, the classic defining triad of ADD is distractibility, like there goes chicken. Right now I can look out here and see that, it's the distractibility. And it's also hyperactivity. Now, the hyperactivity doesn't show up very often in adults. It does some, but how it will show up is is that restlessness on the inside. And so sometimes it can be that misdiagnosed as anxiety and depression. And you may have anxiety, depression, and ADD. We don't know. But a good clinician, a good doctor, a good someone that specializes in ADD can give you a clear diagnosis. Don't just go down in the phone book and pick a doc and go see them. You've got to get with people who understand this syndrome. So it has, and when we have that hyperactivity, now, children with ADHD, it usually manifests itself with hyperactivity. In our adult life, we can be very active and it not be real hyper, but the restlessness, the hyperness, a lot of times is on the inside. So, and also it can manifest itself as daydreaming. Now, this is where a lot of children get misdiagnosed. With having that they're not diagnosed with having ADHD. I believe today that I had ADHD as a child, but mine didn't manifest itself as being hyperactive. There was a kid in my third grade class named Douglas, and we didn't know anything about ADHD, but he had it. I mean, he'd be climbing out the windows, he'd do everything. Climbing on top of the teacher's desk. But I was a daydreamer. Now, a lot of your ADHD kids will be daydreamers, and adults will be daydreamers. Like I'd be sitting in class looking out the window, and I'd be in San Francisco, or my imagination would go wild. And, so it can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. And one of the things this is why you really need to get a good diagnosis, because what happens is when you have ADD, and I will tell you this in a few minutes in the signs and symptoms, and I love saying this because people with ADD usually are highly intelligent. We are some very intelligent people. But we have too many interests. We'll go here and here and here and here in 1 minute, So a lot of it is learning how to focus, because ADD people have a hard time focusing. So with that kind of intro, but this book, Driven to Distraction, I guess it's still in print, I don't know. But they had, about the time, right after I was in Fort Worth, it was later on in the fall, Abilene had brought this man to Abilene, and there was probably 1,000 people at the Civic Center. I didn't know that many people was interested in ADD, but they were about 1,000 people, and he spoke, but he spoke from the heart because he was a physician and had suffered from ADD all his life and was renowned in his field, but he never felt like he had achieved anything. He had never really gotten there. Now that's what ADD people do. I don't care how much we succeed, how much success we have, we never feel like we have really gotten there. We've never, won the prize. We've never completed the task. So with that, it's Edward Hollowell. I would really encourage you to, you got it there. I say, yes, good. Yeah, I've looked at other books. This is more thorough. And what he stresses in his talk, and what he stresses is use some humor with yourself. And all through this book, he uses humor in the book. And it just helps us not take ourselves quite so serious. Yeah, we have to take the disorder or the syndrome serious and treat it, but kind of get off our own back. So anyway, briefly, I want to go over what I'm reading this is just, and I'm not putting all of them down, but these are some signs and symptoms. And I go, check, 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 check. See if any of these ring a bell to any of you. So adult ADD typically marked by inattention and hyperfocus, often internalized restlessness, emotional deregulation, and excessive mind wandering. Our mind wanders. Okay, so number one, difficulty in following directions. Our reading directions. Directions? What are directions? Anyway, ADD people have a little problem following directions. Number two, completing tasks in a timely manner. Now, what I would do, and I still do, is I can do several things at the same time. And if I keep circling long enough, I'll get them all done. But it's about, and I have to really focus today on what I'm doing. And it really, and that is really how you treat ADD, is you learn to focus and bring yourself back to the focus. Right now, I'm wanting to get into a whole lot of other stuff instead of focusing on what I have written down. So I am showing you, I'm demonstrating to you what ADD actually is, and I brought my book. So here we go. All right. All right, so it's, and I don't like this number 3. I hope Kim is not listening. I do not like number 3, chronic lateness. Now I'll tell you, I have worked on that, and I am good. I am much better about being late, but chronic lateness. And so what that has made, majority of my children, like I have a dozen, but anyway, I have 4, they are hyper vigilant about being on time. I always hear Kim saying, if she's on time, she's late. And she, made a decision in childhood, I'm not going to be late because my mother's late to everything. All right, number 4, and I don't like this one either. Chronic procrastination or trouble getting started. One of the first 4 steps I did after coming back from treatment, I did a 4th step, and I did a 5th step with my sponsor, and I encouraged her. I said, well, why don't you write down my character defects? I can be so manipulative. And she said, no, I'd rather not do that. You tell me what you think they are. No, you tell me. Anyway, she wrote down one word, and what that one word was procrastination. And I got angry because she thought I procrastinated. I do. I don't as much. No, these are things I have had to diligently work on for the last 27 years. Okay, and intolerance of boredom. An ADD person seldom feels boredom. I mean, I can understand people being bored. We can't tolerate, an ADD person usually cannot stand to be bored. Now, I can, if I want to, and I have had to learn to do this. I used to wouldn't take a nap. I don't care what. Today I can. But I've had to work on these symptoms. I'm kind of laughing and making it light, but I was pretty severe with ADD. And the diagnosis that I had before this was narcolepsy. And I went years being treated for narcolepsy. And after I got this diagnosis and started treating the symptoms, I didn't have anybody's narcolepsy. It's just so interesting. So anyway, then this boredom thing, because what happens when we feel bored, we get into another project. I've always been pretty much a project person. Now, I wore my kids completely out, particularly the ones who work for me, because they would just be on one project and I would think of another one and then another one, or I would go out of town and I'd get to thinking. That was my problem. I'd get to thinking of what else we could do, and I'd call back. They hated those calls because I'd say, okay, now we can do this, we can do that. If you do that, that's ADD. And I will tell you, by the grace of God, I do not do that anymore that I know of. But I'm sure they'll let me know if I do. Okay, so number 6, easily distracted, trouble focusing on the here and now. Number 7, ADD people are often, you're going to find that these folks are very creative. They're intuitive. they're almost mind readers. My good therapists. They are highly intelligent and they're ideal people. So that's not a bad symptom, I mean, to have. It's being able to work with that, to work within that. And 8 is trouble going through the proper channels. We think that you know, when you want to do something, I mean, don't go, I'm much better than I've ever been. I want you to get that. But before, if I wanted to do something, you know, I wouldn't take the proper channels. I'd go to the top. I'd go to begin at the top person. And I mean, I just cut out all of that in between stuff, just go to the top. And sometimes that works real well. But anyway, we do, ADD people have a hard time of going through channels and, you know, cutting through all of the red tape, all of that. So, because going through the red tape and taking time and all of that, ADD people get very frustrated and they want it done now, right now. Any of y'all can identify with any of this, or am I the only one here? All right. And this is just a follow up on what I've been saying. Number 9 is impatient. My dad used to say, "You're the most impatient child that I had ever seen." I mean, if I heard it once, I heard it 4,500 times. You're impatient, low frustration, and gets angry if things don't happen quick enough, fast enough. I've worked on that a lot. I've worked on all these, and I'll tell you how I've worked on them. And then number 10 is impulsive. I won't go into what it was, but I made a very impulsive decision. I mean, it's not anything connected with my business. It's a personal thing. I made a very impulsive decision. And then 2 days later, I'm changing my mind. So I'm not completely well, folks. And I can change my mind, but you know, sometimes I usually, and this was part of the recovery, is to check out before I would act, check it out with someone, check it out with another person, and you know, at least one other person. So that impulsive, verbally or in action. And then action is in spending money, changing your plans, changing careers. You know, it's always in that changing mode, changing, going from this to that to something else. Number 11 is a tendency to worry needlessly, endlessly. To worry becomes what attention turns into when it isn't focused on some task. So ADD people, if we're not, you know, because we're task people, if we're not focusing on a task, then a lot of times ADD people will get in way into the future and worry and worry and worry and stress about things that haven't even happened, may not ever happen, but it takes up space in the brain. So number 12, ADD people a lot of times have a sense of insecurity. Many adults feel like that this world would collapse around them, is going to collapse around them. You know, there's a lot of insecurity with ADD people. And you may, all this may not fit you, or none of it may fit you. It's that henny penny syndrome. The sky is falling, the sky is falling, you know, somebody do something, you know, that fear, that insecurity of what's going to happen. And then 13 is ADD people can have mood swings. They can go from being in a good mood to swinging all the way over to the other side and being in a bad mood in a short period of time. it can be hours or it can be minutes, just that pendulum swinging back and forth. And it confuses the hell out of people that you're around, and it's hard to work with, well, how's she going to be now? So anyway, and sometimes those bad moods won't last very long, but they make a big impact on people if you're not careful. So I spoke a little earlier about the hyperactivity in adults ADD. The hyper part is a lot of times not manifested on the outside, but it's manifested on the inside is restlessness, that nervous energy, not being able to sit still, always thinking about the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. It's hard to relax and just be. 15, tendency, isn't this amazing? The tendency toward addictive behavior, drugs, alcohol, gambling, shopping, eating, overwork. It's why we see a lot of our addicts come in that have already been diagnosed with ADD. When they come in, if we don't diagnose them with ADD, they bring the diagnosis with them, and they usually bring the medication with them. They've already been diagnosed with ADD, and that they have, why they come to see us is this addictive behavior. They're into an eating disorder, they're into alcoholism, drug addiction, anything to ease that pain and slow them down where they can breathe and focus. And then 16 is chronic problems with low self-esteem. Before diagnosis, for most people with ADD, before the diagnosis, they might have done a lot of good things in their life, but they never feel like they've got it right, that they've done it right. They never feel like they have really completed the task, run the race, got the award. They just never feel like that they're getting it right. And I see that with ADD people that we treat here, and that chronic low self-esteem. And then 17 is inadequate self-observation. A lot of times ADD people have no idea the impact they have on other people, particularly their families, their employers, or their employees. People with ADD kind of live in their own little bubble, and they have no idea. It's much like addiction. We have no idea that what we're doing is affecting someone else. And usually that's how you doctors know to get to diagnose someone with ADD. Talk to the family, talk to the boss, talk to people around you, and you may think that, that behavior that you have is you just are that get or done type of person, and that you can just do a lot of things at the same time, and and you look around and you're wearing your family out, or your employees out, or your employer will give you a task and you'll start on it, then you'll look over there and think, well, I need to be doing this, and you'll leave this task and go over there to do something you wouldn't even ask to do. That's how that brain, that biology of the brain does. It just do like ping pong. Now, see, right now, I had an ADD thought. Ping pong. I was at the country club for lunch yesterday, and the tennis pro said the number one sport in America today. Y'all know what the number one sport in America is today? What is it?
Pickleball.
Pickleball. Have y'all heard of pickleball?
Yeah.
The number one sport in America today. Now that's how my ADD works. I was talking about this, the ping pong, then I thought of pickleball. So that's how it works. And I could go into all that, and then I'd forget. All right, I'm not completely well, y'all, but I'm aware of it. That's the difference. All right, so with a someone, a clinician or a psychiatrist or psychologist or whoever, or medical doctor that understands ADD, they will probably want to talk to the family, because that's really a real diagnostic tool, is to talk to the family, because they observe things that we are clueless that we're doing. It becomes a way of life for us, and we don't know how what we're doing is affecting another person. And then we wonder, a lot of us are overachievers or overworkers. We will overwork and sometimes not accomplish a whole lot, or we don't think we've accomplished a lot. And here we're wearing out everybody around us. They're trying to keep up with us, and we don't think we've accomplished enough. So the family and employers and employees can really give a lot of insight on how an ADD person shows up in their life. Because ADD people see themselves as less effective and less powerful than most people see them. You can rise up the head of, you can do a lot of good things and be maybe head of your profession or really doing well, but you never think that you have achieved it. You never think that you have achieved enough, ADD people. So also number 18 is majority of ADD people, there's a family history of ADD. Now remember, we haven't had this diagnosis forever, but think back about your parents, your grandparents. Sometimes it's like addiction. It can run in families. And not all, but a majority of your ADD people that have been diagnosed in adult life, you look back, maybe many was diagnosed in childhood as ADHD. Not all, but majority. I was never diagnosed, but in looking at the signs and symptoms in childhood, like I reported, my main symptom was the daydreaming. And that is that getting out. And I think a lot of that, I want to say this, it can be from growing up in dysfunctional home and alcoholism and all that, but that's not what ADD is. It is not about, how much problems you had with your mother or how much this or that. Those are, could be real separate problems. They can be problems. But that's not ADD. You have ADD because it's a biological brain syndrome. Now, you may have trouble with your mother, and you may have trouble with, society, you may have other problems. So, but you can't, like, for instance, we do a 4-day intensive. If you have ADD and you haven't been diagnosed, and you come in here and you do the work around your childhood, when you leave here, you're going to still have ADD. It's a separate thing. All right. I'm beating that to death, aren't I? Okay, so let's talk about what we can do to manage it. And I've done this, and it works, folks. It really does. It's really the first thing, and I cannot express this enough, get a clear diagnosis from a professional. And, you can go to highly credentialed professionals, but if they don't understand ADD and have studied it, you won't get a good diagnosis. What you can come out, what they have to exclude is related similar conditions like anxiety and depression, OCD, hyperthyroid, manic depressive. So those things can look like ADD. Are you getting me? So you've got to go to a good clinician that can rule out all of those things and come up with a clear diagnosis of ADD. 2, educate yourself. The most powerful treatment for ADD is understanding ADD in the first place. Read every book you can get your hands on. Educate yourself about it, because a lot of professionals don't know about it. You go, and I am not down in professional doctors, but doctors are trained. You go in, you report the symptom, and they write out a script. So get with doctors who understand ADD. I've said that 14 times. Read the books, talk with other adults who have ADD. And then there is a national organization, and there are local, in many towns, local organizations, support groups for ADD. And so avail yourself to that, because it's like any problem, it's really like addiction. It's that identification. If you can talk to someone that is in the process of learning how to use their brain, in spite of the ADD, you can, one thing, it'll help you realize that you're not nuts, that you're not crazy, that you haven't made it up, that you do have a diagnosis. But get with other people that are in the process of recovering and working on it every day. So another thing, and this is one of the things that helped me so much, and keep in mind, this was in the early days, 27 years ago. And what the doctor said is find a coach to help you. Now, there was a woman here, and there's usually, someone that has a personal interest in some subject that gets the ball rolling. And how this doctor, Dr. Hollowell, how he was invited to come to Abilene was because of this one woman. Her husband had ADD, all of her children had ADHD. She was looking for answers. And so through her, I found a coach, and I worked with that coach. It's not a sponsor. Now you could, maybe I would say, don't use a sponsor, don't use your spouse, get someone that understands ADD and that is in the process of recovering themselves. And what a coach does is they'll hold you accountable. I have been a list maker all my life, but I couldn't do my list because I would add more on my list than I could ever accomplish. And she would have me focused on every morning. We started out with 3 things. And I'd say, but I haven't. Nope, you're going to do 3 things. I still do 3 things a day, regardless of what else I want to do. I accomplished 3 things. And it started with her coaching me on, you pick 3 things and you get them done, and then we'll look at the rest of the list. And I talked to her, started out every morning for 5 days a week. And then I did that all total. I worked with her probably for 6 months. And then periodically I would talk, call her back through the years. But find someone also that's not a taskmaster. Find someone that has some humor. You're going to have to use some humor in working with your own ADD process and with other people. Find some humor in it, because it is humorous. It is, because you can be having a conversation with someone and all of a sudden be distracted. And you're not listening to that person. You are thinking about that bird out there in that tree, or how bad that yard is horrible. I need to get out there and work the yard. And they don't even know you've left the room, and so that's why it's hard to have relationships early on with ADD people until they get into recovery, until you understand as family members what the syndrome is. And so choose a coach, but choose someone that has some humor, that can help you, look at yourself and not get so down on yourself. And number 4, seek encouragement. Be around people who will encourage you and in your growth in ADD, because ADD, and I've never known, anyway, this came right out of the book. ADD adults need lots of encouragement. We need encouragement. And because without encouragement, we don't thrive very well. We don't thrive very well with our own encouragement, because our brain gets kicked in and it tells us, you can't do that, you're not going to succeed, and like the addict brain. But the ADD brain is a downer. It really does tell you bad things about yourself. So ADD people thrive on encouragement. It doesn't take it's not false encouragement or compliments, real encouragement, and then good compliments. Job well done. I don't know if my daughter Kim is listening or not. That's how, Kim and I work really well together. And I know, we encourage each other. And I know if I'm going to work with Kim and get and accomplish anything, there's can be no negative. There's got to be encouragement. And boy, she's on the ball and she gets her done. That's that ADD part, because there's a part of the ADD brain that thinks we can't do it good enough. All right, so ADD, number 5, realize that ADD is not what it isn't, and then what it is, and get appropriate treatment for it. I can't, don't just keep on till you get the diagnosis. But you got to go to someone that understands ADD, because they might diagnose you with all these other things and put you on 14 different meds, and it may be ADD. Now, I will say, I'm not a physician, but I will say most of your ADD people are put on some kind of meds, and I will tell you it works, but meds alone is not the answer. Meds, all a good medication for ADD does, it helps you stay focused. It helps the brain stay focused. And then all of these other things is behavioral changes that we have to work toward. And then educate your family. Number 6, educate your family and people you work with about ADD. It's not about getting sympathy from it, but just let them in on, that when you're, maybe you're around the table. And I look back at the Serenity House when I was program director there, and they brought in this new director, and he asked me things that I thought that needed to be changed or things that we could do. I made him a long list, and I took it to him, and he went over that, and he said, "This is too much. We'll never get this done. Where did you come up with all of this and all of that?" And it's the way that I presented it. Now, at the next board meeting, he took that same piece of paper and he presented it to the board. Do you think he ever said, did you think he ever gave me any credit? I must still have a little resentment about that. I don't know. But that's what happens when with ADD people, we can get the ideas, but then we present it in such a way that when we're even talking about it, it wears the person out. And I think he was just overwhelmed with the information. And then later on, he looked at it and thought, wow, this is good stuff. This will make me look good in front of this board. I was sitting there at the board meeting when he presented that, and he was going to throw it in the trash. So anyway, ADD people can be very smart, but it's in our presentation that makes the difference. Listen to feedback from trusted others. Be sure, but make sure that they understand what ADD is, and then listen to their feedback. 8, try to get rid of all the negativity you have learned to live with before you were diagnosed. It was a relief to me. It was a relief to get the diagnosis that I wasn't mentally ill, that I wasn't nuts. And it was. And just medication alone is not going to get it. A good therapist will help you work through the feelings of before you got the diagnosis. Because there's usually a lot of negative connotation that goes along with before you get the diagnosis of, not being able to accomplish things or doing too much at one time, all of that, So a good therapist will help you sort that out and see the truth about yourself. And the truth that you're going to see, if you have ADD, you're a sharp cookie. You're smart. You've got to learn to work with your symptoms. Number 9, don't feel feel chained to conventional careers or conventional ways of doing things. Give yourself permission to be yourself. I want you to, I'm not going to mention any names, but I want you to, you might even want to do a little research on all these young people who put in these billion-dollar tech companies. Many of them didn't graduate from college. Many of them have ADD. And that brain, once they learn to work with their brain, have become so successful, So anyway, give yourself permission to be yourself and look at all the good qualities that you have that has come from having that syndrome in the brain. And just give yourself permission to be yourself. Number 10, if you have been diagnosed with ADD, you have and I said a while ago, it's neurological. It's not a disease. It's not like addiction. Now you may use an addiction to ease the symptoms of ADD, but it is brain chemistry, it's biology. It's genetically transmitted. It is caused by biology. It is how your brain is wired. It's not a disease or it's not, you're not lazy. It's not about, that you're just doing this to yourself, nor is it a moral failing. It is rooted in biology, not a weakness of character. And the last one, try to help others with ADD, and you will turn to help yourself. That's what this doctor said. He didn't mention AA, but it's on the same principle. When you have recovered from something, or you're in the process of recovering from something, help someone else, because when you do that, help them, you're going to also help yourself. So that's what I have. And I will tell you, I do have ADD. I'm very aware of it. And there's times that I'm into some of these symptoms and then catch myself, or my family will catch me, or my close friends. And then the thing about it, I have surrounded myself with other people with ADD. So it's not just me. And it's funny when you start a conversation, the two of you, and then one of you go in that direction and the other go in this direction, and then you come all back around to the original topic of the conversation and laugh about it. It can be fun, but I'll tell you, when you don't have the diagnosis, what I felt like, and I felt like a failure, and I felt like I wasn't smart. And when I was a kid at Austin Elementary School in Odessa, Texas, while they did that in Ector County, but they called us in, my parents, myself, and I had scored the highest grade of any child in Ector County, highest IQ. So I went through life thinking I was smart, but I couldn't stay focused on anything long enough to accomplish anything. But then I thought, well, I'm smart, but I'm not really smart. Anyway, it's confusing, folks. So let's talk about it. What do you have? And I can pretty much look at y'all, because I know most of you pretty well. I know which of you probably have ADD and which don't, and which have a family member that is. So anyway, let's visit, ask questions. I don't know if I have any answers, but we'll talk together. Who wants to go first?
Gina has her hand up.
Who does?
Gina.
Gina, hey y'all.
I know, Gina, okay.
Oh, God. Everything, every single thing, everything that you said, check. I think I have cried more tears, or not more, just as much tears related to having ADHD as I've had with having an addiction. It has the level of frustration, it will raise my energy. For instance, my significant other was in here and he talks on the phone and speaker, and I'm trying to do schoolwork, and then I'm trying to listen to this, and then I stopped because I saw some stuff on the floor and I started sweeping that, and I'm trying to pay attention, and his voice is loud, and the level of frustration rises and rises and rises until I feel like I'm in a rage. And then once I'm in that state of mind, every little tiny thing makes me irritable. And so I know that today I cannot be treated with the meds. Y'all actually took me off of the meds the second time I went because I was addicted to them. I left treatment, got back on them, and then it took me another probably 5 years of experimenting to finally realize that I was a full-blown addict. And so I recently started grad school, and I am mourning the loss of my brain being treated with the ADHD meds. And I talked to my sponsor about it, and she helped me so much. She said, it's okay to grieve the loss of it, but ultimately look at what happened. It led to you failing. When you were on ADHD meds, you really, you didn't, it led to the downfall of me being able to do anything successful because I was such an addict. So it didn't work out for me. And so now I'm having to learn new ways of learning. I've been clean off the drugs for 5 years, but just started back with something that it really challenges my untreated ADHD. And I'm just having to take a lot of extra time, which normally I'd be, doing it really smooth. But it's frustrating. I'm really considering, like what you said, to take a look at a coach, because this is a handicap in my life. It's a disability that shapes it integrates every area of my life. I can't listen to a conversation without wanting to answer. I want to finish people's sentences. I don't believe in myself. Everything I do is not enough. All those things that you talked about, all of it. My brain works at lightning speed half the time. I exhaust not only myself, but the people around me. And so it's just frustrating because, at one point it wasn't as bad when I was on the meds, but if it was God's will for me to be treated with the meds, then I wouldn't have been addicted to them. So I so appreciate this topic. If anything, just to know that that I'm not alone. I wish that more people knew about it. Because when I try to explain to someone when I'm going through it, they're like, well, everybody's ADHD. We all have a problem focusing, and it's just like, you have no clue. Yeah.
And we hear that a lot, that everybody has ADD or ADHD. They don't, but people have busy lives and they get overcommitted and all. But ADD is biology. It is a brain syndrome, and people need to get a good diagnosis. And medication works if you can take it as prescribed. But I hear because of your addict brain, more was better until it wasn't. So I'm glad that you are in grad school, and I hope you can find someone, a coach, and there's a national organization, and they may have someone in your area. And I gladly paid the woman, I paid her by the month, and it was worth every penny of it, because she had, was in recovery herself, and she understood. So it is different from the 12-step program that's for free and for fun, but this is a little different coaching because they give you their time and attention. So anyway, all righty, who's next? Taylor.
Hi,
Taylor.
good morning. Hi, good morning. Thank you for that, Tennie. That was really good. ADD is just like all over my life and always has been. I was diagnosed, I don't know, fairly young. I mean, out of elementary school, but I had that typical kind of girl ADD, and I was still a high achiever. So I really, I was glad to get a diagnosis, because sometimes I thought, like, this shouldn't be this hard, what I'm doing, and I don't know why I'm making it hard, and I don't know how to stop it. And my parents listened, and so I got on medicine, and I was like, okay, great, problem solved. And and so I just would do that and go about my day. And then now, being off the medicine till I get like really solid into recovery in all areas, and being back in graduate school, I don't know. It's like the ADD is interesting. And, and I've started thinking, when I taught, because of my background in special ed, if any child had diagnosed ADD or was suspected to have ADD, they got put in my class because they were like, oh, you've worked with kids before like this. And so if you have 6 to 8 kids in your class with ADHD, it's like whack-a-mole. It's a lot of fun, but it's a bit much some days. But just coming up with alternative strategies to help them. And so been recently starting thinking like, okay, if a kid in my class were struggling with like what I'm struggling with, like what would I do for them? And doing that for myself. And some of it is just for me recognizing when I'm doing something that's ADD. Like the other day I woke up and I was like, I think I have a lot of stuff to do. And I was like, I should make a list. And so I go downstairs and I'm like, oh, I'm out of the Post-it notes that have lines on them that I like to make my list. I guess I can't make a list. And so,
yeah, you got it.
Yeah. And so then like an hour later, a friend called and she's like, what are you up to today? And I'm like, I really have no idea. I'm out of my Post-it notes. And she was like, get a piece of paper. Like, and it was like, oh, okay, right. You're right. Okay. And so I sat down and did it. And then I noticed still didn't get much done. And I was like, okay, I think I need to put like times on this, like when I'm going to do each of these. Like I need more accountability. And so for me, it's just been like exploring, ways to make myself successful and remembering to find the humor in it and not beat myself up. Because when I worked with kids with ADD, even in 1st and 2nd grade, they would come in and they'd be like, I'm not very smart and I'm bad. And they're 6 and 7 and that's what they believed about themselves. And so like how much work it took to build them back up to where they had, some confidence in their abilities. And a lot of those kids ended up turning out testing as gifted. And you had to approach it with like, what motivated them, what interested them, and they could excel, with certain things in place. And so that, gives me a lot of hope that it's like, okay, like this is manageable. It just might be a little messy in the process. So thank you for a great talk.
Well, I'm glad you talked. I was going to call on you because I knew you'd have some good things to share. Thanks, Taylor. All righty, Megan.
Whew. Well, I relate.
I was going to call on you too.
Everything everyone has said. I have a whole drawer, actually 2 drawers, one right here and one over here that are full of notebooks that I buy and think this time I'm going to get organized. I'm going to fill this notebook, I'm going to use it. And then I get started and they're all really pretty. And then when we got home in December, I told Nick, I really need a new notebook to get started again. And he's like, why don't you look in the drawer? I said, those won't work. Like those are done. I can't get back into those now. So anyway, and then this, I just want to show y'all, this is what my notes look like. Nick's always like, why can't you just write, like, why don't you put bullet points and just write in a straight line? I don't know, because that doesn't work for me. And he's like, but then you can't go back and figure out, then you're asking me what's in your notes because you don't remember what you wrote. Anyway, this brings up a lot for me. And for me, the journey has been through Bodhi, my son, who's diagnosed ADHD and attends a therapeutic school for it. And when you were talking about talking with the family, like, my God, it affects all of us. And Nick and I debrief every night about, the happenings of the day and the impulsivity. And it has taken me learning how to parent a child with it to learn that, like, well, it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck. I'm a duck. And that this apple has not fallen far from the tree. And so when I see him, so much more research has come out surrounding ADHD and what it truly means. I think for all of us growing up, we had a very different idea of what it was. And like that term has just always been thrown around very loosely. But that, there's the masking, and girls are notorious in childhood for masking it. So people don't realize that's what we have because we've learned to adapt in ways. And in childhood, so many of us are criticized, like, well, why can't you just focus on that? Why can't you sit still? Why can't? And I see that in Bodhi of just how sensitive he is and how much encouragement he needs, and the tools we've had to implement at school and here at home. And learning about this concept of RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, this concept, this grandiosity of we're not good enough, the catastrophizing, like for me, oh my God, I made a mistake at work, I'm gonna get fired, like that's it, this job's over, career's done, that's it for me. And so learning how to work with Bodhi in that, like, I feel like I've said this to Nick many times, when I'm coaching him through his challenges, I'm just as much talking myself through it. And we're learning together. The other thing, and so Bodhi has also tested as gifted. He's grade level above in all of his subjects. And so all of those boxes, are ticked. And then I just want to say two other things. One, forgetfulness has been a huge part of this for me that has gotten worse as I've gotten older. And so I have all these lists, but then I lose the list. It's just a mess. One of the things that that Nick taught me about that he used with his kids, and now we use them, is we use time timers, and you can get them on Amazon. They come in all different sizes and you can get them that are this big, or we have the little ones. And that's what we use for Bodhi in the morning, for him to have a visual. Like, the visuals are just so important, even for us as adults to use. And it's a way for me, I'm not great at it, but I'll set a timer, like I'm going to spend 15 minutes just doing this one thing, then I can get up and move. Because in my mind, it's always like, well, I can't start this thing until I finish this. I can't start working until the kitchen's clean. But then I have to go upstairs to get a rag, and then the closet needs to be reorganized. Well, then once I get that done, I can finish the kitchen, then I can start my work for the day. And before I know it, it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm up at all hours working. So anyway, this just all fits for me, and we are so in the thick of it. So thank you for talking about this today.
Well, thank you. And I'm so glad that Bodhi has you as the mom, that you're really helping him and then helping yourself in the process. I'll give anything, and I can't go back and undo and redo, but I know that my Kim, I'm sure she would have been diagnosed with ADHD. They didn't do that back in those days. But anyway, she is today, and that's what's good. Hi, Kim. I hope you're on there.
She's on.
I'll tell you today, the work that I get to do at the center, and I'm going to go over there and work this afternoon. And I will tell you, and I tease about Kim being the other half of my brain. I absolutely do not believe that I could go into the group room today and do what I do without having Kim there, or someone, but particularly Kim, because we worked together for so many years. And if I forget something, she'll give me a look, she'll give me a hand gesture, something, and we just work like that. And because she knows me and I know her. So anyway, keep working with your son and you're going to get better. All righty. We've got just a minute.
We got Chris, Patty, and Suzanne.
Okay. Chris.
Wow. Walk through all of your own journey, Tennie. I have sleep apnea, and at one point my doctor said, you might have narcolepsy. And as I've learned more about ADHD and the sleep patterns that go with that, I understand that I don't, but what's going on, boredom in projects, future tripping, insecurity, never being done. I found in the last maybe 6 or 8 months that the closest friends I've had throughout my life have all been diagnosed in adulthood with ADHD. And what I love about being with those people is that I never feel like I have to be aware of what I'm saying or how I'm acting, because we just kind of get each other.
Yeah.
You know, you have those good friends where you just get each other. And I found that all of mine, we're all a bunch of ADHD guys. One thing I found, and my kids, 3 out of 5 have been diagnosed. There may be more. Taylor mentioned whack-a-mole. Anytime we get together as a family, dinner, let's have prayer. You know, you can sit in a congregation at church of hundreds of people, and the pastor says, let us pray, and everybody goes to pray. But when we sit down to dinner and let's bless the food, man, it takes 5 minutes to get 5 or 6 people ready to have a 30-second grace. So there's some frustrations, but one of the things I've found with ADHD is, and I speak for myself, I don't know how other folks with it are operating, but is pattern recognition, where because I have a hard time seeing what's right in front of my face, but everything else is kind of ever present, it's easy to sit back, I shouldn't say that. Something in the back of my head connects all the dots and goes, hey, there's a pattern here. And if we follow that, we can solve certain types of things. I use that in my work a lot. And I found that's really advantageous. And so a couple of folks mentioned going back to school. My experience in school, I had one experience comes to mind, and I'll close. I had one class that was just right after lunch, and that's a bad time anyway. But at the time, I had undiagnosed sleep apnea and ADHD, and I fell asleep in class almost every day. And it was a junior level computer science class, and I was getting good grades and doing well on the test. And the guy sitting next to me, I knew from church, one day he was angry. He's, you fall asleep every day. How do you get this? How do you even know what's going on here? And I said, I don't know. I looked at the patterns. I saw the patterns of how the things worked. And so when I came up against something I didn't know how to do, I just followed the same pattern and came up with the right answer. And so there are, some advantages to ADHD that I have found, some strengths that I really enjoy that help me to be effective, not in the same ways as normies, I guess, but in other ways that are still valuable. So thanks for the talk. I'm gonna get the recording and ask my boss to watch this.
Thanks, Chris. One of the things with the diagnosis of narcolepsy, and I had it for years, and and they were questioning, doing taking my driver's license away, but they told me to put an X. I was traveling a lot doing workshops, and they said to put an X on the windshield, like take a marker lot and put an X, and then focus in the middle of that X to drive so I wouldn't go to sleep. So when I was diagnosed with ADD, I talked to the doctor about it, and she said, notice, because what would be happening is I would be looking at the cows out there in the pasture, or the pump jack running, in that oil field. I'd be doing something other than looking at the highway. And so that X, I kept it on there for years because it helped me not to get so distracted while driving. So thanks, Chris. All right, Patty, got a minute?
Yes, I want to just take a minute. You encouraged me when you mentioned it in a previous talk, and I got the book, but I'm also dyslexic, and it's kind of set there. And I'm wondering if you could tell me where I could Google to find out about that, a national organization.
Okay, yes, it is. Let me put my glasses back on.
Is it CHADD, Minnie, that you're?
Yes, it is. CHADD, CHADD, CHADD.
Okay.
All righty.
Thank you. I will look that up. I appreciate all you've shared. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you. All righty, Suzanne, good to see you.
good to see you too. Wonderful topic. And I'll be very, very brief because Taylor said whack-a-mole. I used that yesterday with a friend, actually in terms of my addictions that, you know, we discovered overeating and codependency, and I identified this, that, and the other. And, you know, I got to focus on one mole right now. And a few years ago, I came to realize that every person in my family has some degree of ADHD, and it all starts with my mother. She cursed us all, I guess, or blessed us, however you want to look at it. And for myself, I think that I was able to cope with my ADHD while I was working because I had a structure. But since retiring and I've lost that structure, I've really been struggling. And I was talking about procrastination with my, she's not really my sponsor, but she's a good accountability person just yesterday. And so many people have said what I could say. I want to say this, if you didn't already, because I had an issue I had to take care of at the beginning of your wonderful lecture. I heard a psychiatrist lecture to my family practice residents, and I've never forgotten this. He said that girls present differently with ADHD. Girls are the chatty Cathys in the classroom. And you may be thinking that they're okay because they're not bouncing off the wall, but just the fact that they will not shut up because their mind is moving a mile a minute and they just have a lot to say and are easily distracted. Oh, I was going to say my grandchildren have started calling me squirrel because of my squirrel moments. You know, in the middle of a conversation, I'll go off in a weird direction. And sometimes I'll warn them, okay, squirrel, because this thought has run through my brain. And because of my memory issues since doing chemo, I know that sometimes if I don't actually say it, I'm going to forget it. So great topic. We probably should revisit this again so people can share what they have learned to help them. Because, like, real quick, and then I'll hush. When my son was diagnosed, and it took a while to get him diagnosed, I had the chairman of pediatrics at the medical school tell me he was just normal boy busy, as he was literally climbing the walls of the treatment room. I knew that guy wasn't up to par. My son learned how to focus himself, and he would study to movies that he could quote the dialogue backwards on. And for him, that was his background noise so that he could tune out the world and focus on what he was doing. Drove me nuts, but it worked for him. And it might be helpful to hear what other people have figured out that helps them to stay on track, focused. I have bought every piece of Tupperware trying to get the promise of being organized, and it didn't happen. And I make lists like crazy, but I never cross anything off. So I would love to in the future. Maybe we could do that. So love you, Tennie. This was great. Hi, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. I will tell you, I've been joking about my own recovery, but I have good recovery from ADD, and I can stay on task. And you can come and look at any dresser drawer or my cabinet drawers or my cabinets, and they're neat and they're orderly. And I couldn't do that with before ADD. I mean, before being diagnosed. And really, it's about staying conscious and being really, because we go unconscious with the thought, you know, just out la la land. So it's about bringing ourselves back, you know, to the moment and focusing. It's retraining, and it's and there's different ways, there's different techniques that you can use, so I think we do need to revisit it. And y'all, you know, do some different things if you are diagnosed, and then with it, and then let's come back in a couple of months and talk about your progress and what you're doing, and if it's working and what's not working and what is working. But I do want to give you hope, but I had to work hard at getting, working with the ADD. And it wasn't easy. It's not my nature. My sister was a neat freak. I mean, obsessive with it. And I couldn't do that. And my sister-in-law came from first year that Ariel and I married, my sister-in-law came. She's kind of like my sister, very neat. And she opened my cabinet drawer where I kept cup towels, and I would just put them in there. I wouldn't even fold it because, I was going to be using them anyway. They were going to get wrinkled up. Well, she just criticized me up one side and down the other. She's not living anymore. She's passed away. But if she came today and looked in my cup towel drawer, she'd see it all neat. And what helped me was that, what is that? Spark Joy book, that helped me organize. And I went through every cabinet in my house. And so it does take action, and it takes willingness. It's like, recovery from addiction. It takes willingness and action, and then you're going to see results. And I did not think I could be. I mean, I'm a neat freak. I'm clean, but my cabinets were just helter skelter, but they're not today. So there is hope for all of us. Now, next week, someone said about the mental obsession, and then others said, talk about switching addictions. So why don't I combine the two, switching addiction and mental obsession? Because the mental obsession is what separates the addict from the non-addict. Do y'all know that? The mental obsession. Normies, I don't believe normal people have the mental obsession. Do they, Cam? Cam is our token normie.
So. You drive me crazy.
Cam is our token normie, which is kind of, gauge everything about, no, not really, but anyway. So invite people. It's good to see all of you. And in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, let's go back and visit this. And in the meantime, if you need any help, with ADD, give me a call, and I'll give you some of the things that I've done. But it really takes willingness. You just got to be willing to do it, like willing to treat an eating disorder or alcoholism. It's like any other, thing and it's not a disease. It is not a disease like addiction is. It is a biological, neurological problem in the brain. It is a syndrome of the brain. So, but we can learn to work with it. We can be very successful in the process. So see you next week. I'll talk to some of you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, baby. Bye-bye.